Welcome to R&R Living Life. In this episode, Rick and I leave Mary Kathleen and make our way to Cloncurry, then north to the Four Ways and on to Bang Bang Free Camp. Our time spent at Mary Kathleen had been relaxing, and I think for me, having cattle grazing around the camp was an added bonus. The first leg of our journey today was just under 70 kilometres. That would take us to Cloncurry, adjacent to the Cloncurry River, lined with eucalypt trees. Sitting smack bang at the crossroads of the Flinders Highway that enters from the east, the Barclay Highway that exits to the west, the Landsborough Highway entering from the southeast, and the Burke Development Road exiting to the north. The Cloncurry-Dejara Road also exits south from the Barclay Highway just west of the town. The Cloncurry River headwaters rise west of Mount Boomera, near Mount Tracy in the Selwyn Range, and initially flows northwest before turning north and travelling more or less parallel with the Cloncurry-Dejara Road before crossing the Flinders Highway near Cloncurry. Contrary to the stereotypical image of the outback with its flat, dry backdrops with roads leading into seemingly endless horizons, Cloncurry is actually set upon a series of hills with a river flowing by the town. This remote, rugged and spectacular but unforgiving landscape, from red dust plains, staggering ranges and watercourses, is most famous for being the birthplace of the Royal Flying Doctor Service, conceived and launched by the Reverend John Flynn in the 1920s. Having used it on a number of occasions, especially the clinics held on remote properties, this flying medical service is just as integral to the people of the outback today as it ever was, still offering essential outback health care. Cattle grazing is the significant industry in the region, and a large sale yard is located in the town. Roger Chaffee established the first pasture run in the Cloncurry district, Fort Constantine. The town has one of the richest geological layers in the world, with copper and gold mining being core industries since 1867, when Ernest Henry discovered copper in the area, and the town sprung up to service the great Australian mine to the south. Alluvial gold was initially discovered at Top Camp, about 40 kilometres south of the Curry, in 1867, which led to a major gold rush in 1872, with alluvial mining continuing at Top Camp until 1875. Gold mining continued in the region intermittently, though superficial but intensive, until the mid-20th century before declining, only to rebound in the 1980s. Currently, with a renewed upsurge in gold prices, continued gold mining in the Cloncurry area is a wait-and-see moment. Other notable points of interest about Cloncurry are that it was the launch pad for Qantas, where the first passenger flew from Longreach to Cloncurry in 1922, and during World War II, Cloncurry was the location of an RAAF inland airfield fuel depot, usually consisting of 4 tanks, completed in 1942 and closed in August 1944, for the storage and supply of aircraft fuel for both the RAAF and the US Army Air Forces. After spending time catching up with familiar places around town, we made our way along the Burke Development Road. Our next leg today was just over 180 kilometres to the Four Ways, also known as the Burke and Wills Roadhouse. We were crossing flatter to undulating plains of open Mitchell grass with their distinctive golden colour. For a while we were following a line of ranges to the west. We crossed a number of watercourses, including Malakoff Creek. The changing vegetation is always fascinating as we made our way along the highway, from hammock grasses to low open woodlands dominated by eucalypts or Cloncurry box, or less extensively western bloodwoods. Our last visit through the area last year, when we drove as far as Quamby, the majority of trees were in flower. Today it was vastly different. It is amazing just how different the country looks during a different season, especially when you are not seeing it day by day. The changes can be quite unexpected. I was still astonished by the amount of feed that was still around for this time of the year, though with the wet season that the area had had, it was not surprising. We then crossed the Corella River, such a huge expanse that merges with the Dougal River. Roughly 60 kilometres from Cloncurry was Quamby. The town was once a bustling railway village, catering to the needs of the cattle and mining sectors, but now a solitary hotel in red dirt country, once a watering hole for jackaroos of yesteryear. Not that long ago, a decaying timber skeleton, battered by years of wind and dust, the only sign of a once bustling cattle and mining town that eventually died in the 1970s. The Quamby Hotel was originally built as a custom house in the 1860s and converted to a hotel somewhere around 1921. It was also used as a staging post for Cobb and Co stagecoaches that required fresh teams of horses every 10 to 30 miles. Abandoned for years, the historic pub has been restored. In keeping with the historic feel, the interior of the hotel has remnants of the old timber and floorboards used to make tables, while donated saddles, horseshoes and old railway lights add decoration. The shiny new Quamby pub opened its doors in 2023. Grazing properties in the area include Dipvale, Carsland, Malakoff and Bannockburn, while mining, predominantly gold and copper, has become a significant industry in the region, though many small operations have existed since settlement. A major zinc mine exploration just north of Quamby at Dougal River was something new to us. Oh, how the country has changed from when we lived in the area. About 80 kilometres north of Cloncurry, we stopped to stretch our legs at Terry Smith Rest Area 3 Rivers. The locality of 3 Rivers spans around 8,800 square kilometres of arid to semi-arid terrain, with low hills, expansive plains and undulating terrain shaped by ancient geological processes. The area supports cattle grazing in close proximity to mineral exploration sites. Rick and I were surprised by the number of rest stops along this section of the road, as there were none when we were here last. Driving 3 hours into Mount Isa with children and no rest stops was on occasion a very trying undertaking, and back in those days there were no areas to pull off onto the side of the road. With nothing to amuse themselves with, they learned at an early age to be good travellers and not to annoy each other. Quite often we had to distract them with things along the road, like road trains, kangaroos or cattle. We certainly knew we were now in cattle country by the number of road trains that we passed. We passed the turn-offs to Boomerah, Gleeson and Camilroy and on through Lorraine Station before reaching the four-ways. The area is dissected by low plateaus, high plains, ridges and open country, with floodplains along the Leichhardt River, with its headwaters in the Selwyn Range south of Mount Isa. After Lake Julius it bears east and north, again almost parallel with the Burke Development Road, past Augustus Down and enters the Gulf of Carpentaria. Silverleaf box and snappy gums are found in low woodlands including western bloodwood, whitewood, beefwood and paper barks, with shrubs of turpentine, wattles, currant bush and acacias. An understory of soft spinifex, kangaroo grass, buffel and black speargrass can be found. The name Four Ways or Burkenwell's Roadhouse, though we knew it as the Three Ways, refers to the Burke Development Road which passes southwest to north through the locality, with two junctions to the Burke Town Road to the northwest and the Wills Development Road from Julia Creek to the southeast. The locality is bounded by the Leichhardt River to the west and by the Flinders Rivers to the east. The watershed running from north to south through the locality separates the two drainage basins. The Alexander River rises in the southwest of the locality and flows north to become a tributary of the Leichhardt River, which flows into the Gulf of Carpentaria, while in the eastern part of the locality, Dismal Creek and the Cloncurry River flow from south to northeast, ultimately becoming tributaries of the Flinders River, which also flows into the Gulf of Carpentaria. As we arrived at the Burke and Wills Roadhouse, we noticed a for sale sign posted on the fence. This family-operated roadhouse is located 180 kilometres north of Cloncurry and approximately 200 kilometres south of Normanton. It would be one roadhouse that we would be sad to see closed, so hopefully a buyer can be found. During our time living up here, Rick and I had been to the roadhouse quite a number of times. After getting ourselves a cold drink, we wandered across the road from the roadhouse to check out the Camp Draft rodeo grounds. Boy, have they changed since those first 2 years when portable panels were used and we served hamburgers, hot drinks and cold drinks from under a tent. To think that something we were involved in at its inception has now grown to host the Australian Camp Draft Association's national titles wasn't something we had ever imagined. We did it to build a community. Camp drafting was first created in outback Queensland when stockmen and drovers were looking for a new way to entertain themselves. For the uninitiated, this event involves a mounted rider riding into a camp or corral or yard which has 6 or 8 head of cattle in. The rider cuts out a steer or heifer from the cattle in the camp, taking it to the front of the camp, turning the beast at least 2 or 3 times to prove to the judge that they have the beast under control. The rider then calls for the gates to be open. Points out of 26 are awarded for the cutout. The rider then proceeds to draft or work the beast around a figure of 8 course in a large arena, firstly to the left and then the right. Once that is completed, the rider then guides the beast through a gate, which is 2 pegs placed apart. Once gated, the rider is then awarded up to 100 points for horsemanship and control of the beast, all within a set time of 45 seconds. It really does take a good horse and horsemanship skills to complete the course. I was humbled to see the play equipment funded through a grant written at Sedan Dip Camp Draft with the help from Simon and Wendy from Remote Area Family Services all those years ago. We had had regular play groups for the children in the area, some driving hours to the roadhouse, and Simon and Wendy would bring boxes of toys for the children to play with. Such a memorable time, great for child development, and wonderful friends made. After reminiscing about years gone by, Rick and I continued on our way to Bang Bang Free Camp. As we left the 3 ways, we passed the turn-off to Burketown that takes you past Augustus Downs. We were leaving behind the Cloncurry Shire and were now entering the Carpentaria Shire, known as the place where the outback meets the sea, covering an area of just over 64,000 square kilometres that stretches along the southern coast and hinterland of the Gulf of Carpentaria, with its 2 major townships being Normanton and Quamby, though Burketown is also in the Shire, with the countryside ranging from vast inland plains supporting a strong pastoral industry to mangrove forests, deltas and salt pans along the coastal areas of the Gulf. A short-lived gold rush in the 1880s was followed by the beginnings of pastoralism. Beside the highway was evidence of previous fires through the area, with the remains of trees blackened. The grass cover was quite thick, with stands of dried pea bush along watercourses. There is an awe-inspiring natural beauty about the country, but what you see along the roadway is often nothing compared to the country beyond. I think the road narrows the viewer's focus, and we just get to see an extremely small section of what the country really looks like beyond. The 2-lane sealed highway was in pretty good condition, though there were some rougher sections closer to Donner's Hill, and considering the number of causeways and floodways we had crossed, and knowing full well that this country tends to flood, not to mention the type of country prone to sinking, all in all, it wasn't too bad. The arrival of annual monsoons feed these vast tracts of fertile land, producing lush, rich pastures of flinders and Mitchell grasses, and we could see just how good the season was by the amount of pea bush we could see. It is not all flat country and long distances, but the Gulf cattle stations are vast places. The much smaller Stanbroke, now a family-owned company, owns 6 cattle stations here in the Gulf: Camilroy, Donners Hill, McAllister, Augustus, Warrenvale, Glenore and Fort Constantine. These stations, often over 1,000 square kilometres in area, appear as road signs on the road, and are themselves small towns with homesteads, staff accommodation, a store, sheds, workshops, cattle yards, trucks and machinery, and are often with an airstrip with inevitable windsocks. The name of the station is painted on the roof of the homestead to guide the flying doctor when needed, and other planes and helicopters that are often vital to life out here. We passed the turn-off to Cowan Downs, Donners Hill and McAllister, all stations we were familiar with. Out in this vast empty landscape of the Gulf you battle droughts, floods, fires and cyclones, where waking to the bellowing of cattle, the sound of galahs and magpies each morning can be surprisingly peaceful. You learn very quickly to deal with dust, flies, heat, wind and the unexpected, where every day is different, but always with something to look forward to. About 100 kilometres from Normanton, we stopped at the top of a small escarpment called Bang Bang, with a rest area near the Donners Hill Trig Station, a spacious and quiet spot for travellers to pull in, with heaps of room to manoeuvre and park. We found a quiet spot with some shade and made camp. What a memorable day it had been. Rick and I spent what was left of the afternoon in quiet reflection. There had been so many memories that had surfaced today, so we're glad of the peace and quiet. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Give us a thumbs up if you have. Join us next time as we continue on to Normanton and Corumba. Cheers for now. Live life to the full. Rick and Rosemary. R&R Living Life.